Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for having me today. So, what I'd love to do is walk through just some things that I've learned being an introvert my entire life, of course, and using some of those skills, making sure that I can translate them so that I can find more of those opportunities to be seen as a leader, and also just making sure that other people know that I do have those skills, despite my proclivities for keeping to myself. Um, so I'll do a quick run through of my intro and some of the places that I've been. That's towards the end of my deck here. But I'd love to share just some tips, tricks, things that I've learned over time. And then, of course, I want to make sure that this is open and let everyone know if you do have questions or comments or examples that you'd love to share. Feel free to drop it into the chat or I'm not sure if Teams has a raise your hand feature. I use Zoom a lot. So feel free to jump in. I'm not opposed to making it more of a discussion instead of a presentation. So just to get us started, this is the scope of how I'm going to approach sharing some of this information. So our agenda is just going to walk through, what does it mean to be a leader? That means so many things. It's one of those principles that is leader a title? Is leader a mindset? Is leader a, personality type? And sometimes we find that it can seem that way. I'll also just walk through some of the core skills, some of the key words that I think are good for you to use if you would like to elevate your profile as a leader. Some of the communication experiences that you have that you can leverage to show your leadership skill. And then just wrapping up with some action plan examples of things that you can do today to show more of your talents in that way. Okay, so first of all, what is leadership? Um, for some of us in different contexts, it can look like, what is the top engineering position? What is the top manager's position? And of course, hierarchy wise, like, yes, the leader is the person at the top. But leadership is a core value and something that you can develop and also something that you can be seen as. And so the first thing that I always like to say is that technical expertise doesn't actually mean you're a leader. I know that every single one of you has been in a situation where you have worked with someone who is technically a leader, but they aren't really a leader. They don't have leadership skills. They're not good at working with other people. They're not good at, making things work for a diverse group of people. They also maybe just looking out for themselves. There's no such thing as team. They're very much there's no I in team, but type of archetype of person. And so I'd love for you to think about who that is. It could be a former manager, it could be a former colleague, but very much a silo and in it, for themselves. And so even if you are a technical expert, leadership is something that can be seen from any level, and not just the person that's the lead manager or that has the title. And so something that I know that happens that I've seen from time and time again as a program manager, especially with the engineers that I've worked with over time, they have been overlooked for leadership roles. And that can be because of, a big project went aside. A lot of times I'll say that it definitely has to do with that personality type and what they're seen as. I've also had that experience where just because I'm a quieter person and not necessarily like, the class clown or the person that's cracking all the jokes, you're kind of just seen as someone on the team and not someone who can be seen for their potential. And that's something that you have to be clear and understanding that people are looking for those types of things and they can, skip you just because you're not on their mind. And so something that I want to highlight that I've seen the differences in is the communication that I utilize to maximize my influence and then also to create my own career growth. I summarized it as being the person that can connect the dots, and that can make everything make sense. So for instance, a really quick, easy way of something that I did when I first was early career was just one of my managers was not a technical person and she was in charge of a bunch of technical people. So I just looked up a bunch of newsletters and things that she could subscribe to that would help her with understanding more of the day to day. I literally sent her like, hey, there's these 3 newsletters that I really like. You should check them out. And instantly, she sees me as someone that can help her, get better at what her skills, where she lacked. And so that was an easy way to show myself as someone that she could depend on and help her with connecting the dots. Okay. Okay. And so something else that I want to say specifically for all of you that are in data. So specifically, some of my experience with data leadership is making the shift from guiding people and not specifically, just solving the problem that's very straightforwardly in your face. So I like to call this the storytelling element of leadership. So how do you make this program? How do you make this project? How do you make this deliverable make sense to all levels of your stakeholders? So you want to shift your perspective from solving the technical problem to guiding people to solve those problems. So it's really, again, the translating between the technical teams and making sure that your business stakeholders understand what's at stake as just as much as your engineering side. Being that person that's influencing the decision making, not just with your data, but showing and telling the story behind it. And so that's how you build your trust. I think you actually have a really easy way because you're so used to taking data sets and you have concrete evidence. It's really just the soft side of that, which is what does all of that stuff mean? What do these charts mean? Walking people through what they're looking at, I think makes all the difference. So I like to use this photo of Olivia Pope because in almost all aspects of my career, especially as a program manager, it's always the person that's looked at as the get her done person. They can make everything happen. Oh, as long as this person's involved, I know it's going to work out. So I did start to develop that mindset, although, that's not necessarily everyone's goal. You don't want to always be the go-to person that, gets stacked on a bunch of projects or a bunch of busy work. But something that I have learned over the time is it's called the so what test. And so like after every presentation or slide, I ask myself, so what? Um, the idea is just to say, so what does this mean? What does this mean for this specific person? So what does this mean to this team? That way I can put myself in the shoes of someone that's absorbing my material, but they may not understand it or they may be new to it. That just helps me with making a more well-rounded pitch to those people that understand me and then sometimes don't understand. Okay. And I'll pause really quickly. Anything that I've mentioned so far that anyone's vibing with or like saying like absolutely not, I don't get that. Just want to take a break and ask.
Yeah, no, I'd like to say that I really, enjoyed hearing you talking about like managing up in a way and sort of, giving your manager resources. Like I guess, I wouldn't know where that balance is, where it's like, okay, is this going to offend this person or whatever. But yeah, I can definitely appreciate, stepping out of, maybe like a box and just saying like, hey, I think this person needs help, instead of just, talking crap behind their back, for example. So yeah, good insight. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm with you. I will also say there's been times where I have been wrong and I have tried and it didn't work out. It's devastating. And it's just like everything that takes practice. It's just like riding a bike. There's things that you're going to get right the first time, and there's things that aren't going to work out so right.
Right.
It definitely does take you have to figure out which this is like the extra, I feel like is the extra emotional balance of it. Thankfully, I think when you're introverted, you think about things before you do them for the most part. Getting it wrong isn't the worst thing in the world, but you're more likely to get it right than I would say some of our extroverted friends because they speak before they think, or
Hmm.
they're really fast to put a plan into action without really having a full plan. I'll walk through a little bit of a roadmap that I have that's going to be actually in 2 or 3 slides of how I look at approaching um, new ways of being seen or at least trying something new. But I'm with you. There's been a few times where yeah, you're trying to get to know somebody or you're making a new connection, and sometimes it doesn't work out, and that's okay because there's a million and one ways to try something new. So I'm definitely with you. Sometimes, you try, it's a swing and a miss, and then you move on and try something else. So,
Yeah, thanks.
um, okay, awesome. So let's keep going. I wanted to show and leverage some of those keywords. I say keywords, but what are those? What are those things that are going to punch in that you can add to your speeches, to your vocabulary, that are going to change that vision of how you approach things? And so that's why I have this table of just aligning some of the core leadership skills. So some of these things I've actually pulled because I took and fed into a couple of AI models, like what are some of the top leadership characteristics that are asked about um, in job postings and director level positions. That's also one of the tips that I'll talk about in a little bit. But what are some of those key skills that we want to leverage? So, number one is problem solving. How are you developing a vision that shows that you're constantly thinking of ways and creative ways um, of solving those issues that are on your teams and departments? And so, what I try to do with like these top six that I've highlighted here is I've started to build out what are examples of, when someone asks you, how do you approach problems? Or what's a good way to approach a problem? How do you work with others when there is a problem for a project or you run into something that's reported to your team? So I try to answer the question of what companies did I work for? What projects do I have as examples? And if I can't think of anything, then I'm like, all right, then this is one that's on my list that I want to work on. So that's what I'm getting at with this slide specifically. Um, Two, organization. Organization may be something that you're naturally great at. It may be something that you're not so great at, but as long as you can show the effort and products, so whether that's a certain scale of a report that you've created, if it's a number of tools that you have experience with, it also could be just the types of initiatives that you've worked with over time. So showing, how you've developed that organizational skill. Communication, which is the big one. So leveraging your ability to break down complex or technical topics um, is something that translates to all teams. Whether it's a data team, an engineering team, a product team, if you can make it make sense to that person or to that team or work with that team, then I think that communication skill is something that you can show that you already have, and you can also develop into a big part of your leadership strategy. And then the last three, I'm not going to breeze through them, but more about the relationship building. How do you become the person that people go to? How do you become that person that solves the problem when someone comes to you? And then also, how do you become that person that knows other people? So, whether you have like that social side of you love showing up to, the random happy hours or going to lots of events, relationship building can be as easy as like, taking a coffee break with someone and doing a quick intro meeting. Something that I really like to do that's actually helped me out a lot. I'm on a cybersecurity team at JustWorks here, and so I don't naturally get to meet, all of the product managers or even some of the people that work in underwriting. Like there's some sides of the business that I don't, have projects or access to. And so something easy that I've done is if I'm in a meeting and I see like a name that I don't know, I literally just send them a message right away and say, hey, I introduce myself. I just wanted to set aside like a quick meeting to get to know you and what you do at the company. And I send them a meeting invite and I just set it up and I just give them a heads up like, hey, I'm just going to send you an invite. Just wanted to chat. And so I'm happy to go over like a agenda that I have for that. But it's just an easy way to build your own relationships. And then it's so easy for me to bring in to the CISO, like, oh, I met, Randy in underwriting. And then she's impressed. She's like, oh, how did you meet him? What's going on there? What do they have going on? And you suddenly become this person that knows everybody and they don't know how. So it's something that I've leveraged myself that's made my leadership strategy, increase, or the profile of my leadership strategy increase. Okay, last, critical thinking, just being clear that you're thoughtful, that you know how to work with other people, and highlighting that. Really, the biggest part of this is showing the examples of when you've done these things. And I keep a separate list from my resume that's like the long form list. I literally have all my examples underneath every project of how I've leveraged some of these skills, so that it's clear to me. One, I don't forget them because time goes by and you don't remember everything. But also, I can show over time how I've developed that skill, because when I started out as a project coordinator, critical thinking is the scope for that is way smaller than it is as a program manager. And so I can also tell the story of how I've made intentional steps to develop that skill myself. Okay. Um, so let's talk more about, how do I take some of these ideas and put them into action? How do I, you know, get some tangible steps into continuing to build my leadership background? So the first thing I always think of, as far as the end goals, are twofold. What are my short-term goals? And then what are my long-term goals? So am I actually looking for my long-term goal to become a CISO someday? What does that look like? Of course, you can't predict anything. Tomorrow I might wake up and say, I'm inspired to start my own company. I'm going to make myself the CISO. That's always possible. But is my dream to be the CISO at PepsiCo? Well, that's going to take some concerted effort. How do I get myself into that position to get there? So I know maybe hopefully everyone has some anecdotes about, creating your own luck. And I think that's something that's made an impact over the years, which is, how do I put myself in the position to be lucky, to be selected, to be picked for something like that? There's things that you can do to prepare yourself. And so that's what I want to focus on, which is, how do you find those opportunities? How do you build your own opportunities? And then how do you take where you're at right now and then create that roadmap so that you can build your own luck? Okay, so the next portion, I'm about midway in all of my little slides. The next part, I'm going to go through the action map of how I perceive things, or at least how I've helped manage taking some of my introvert characteristics and making that work for myself. Um, I have a younger sister who is completely opposite to me. She's a fly by the seat of her pants, and it has worked out phenomenal. She's graduated a PhD program and made a really she's done fantastic. And how you like, to me it's perplexing because there's times where I'd talk to her and she'd say, "Oh, I think I'm going to apply to this school." And it's like, "What are you, Shannon, what are you talking about? You never talked about that before." And she's like, "Oh, I'm just ready for it." She didn't plan for it. She just decided to go for it. That is not how my brain works. So I have to sit down and think about things a little bit harder and be a little more thoughtful in how I want to approach things. And so that's a little bit of the background on how I came up with coming up with more of a practical roadmap and developing my personal plan. So let's walk through this a little bit. If anyone has questions on the way that I've worded some of this stuff, or you have an example of something that you'd like to share, feel free to jump in because I think it would be perfect to share some of these things, or at least some real life examples of things that you may have already done that could be helpful for others. So let's start. Let's start left to right. Basically, what are the two like avenues that I like to think about? So I think about technically, what do I know? Like, what are the skill sets that I have besides, my titles, and then also the relationship side. So we'll start with technical. For me, my background the last 8 years or so has been in cybersecurity and infosec. And so technically, I've seen projects and programs that are um, in that very niche uh, skill set. And so knowing that that's what I have, and also that I'm a program manager, I have project management experience that is a little bit more beyond just infosec. Um, I first think about what are ways that I can use those technical skills that I already have and use them in other places or other parts of the business. So for me, that looks a lot like volunteering for cross-functional projects that aren't necessarily a part of my team's purview. Um, in different ways, that can mean, just being available as a resource for another team. Or if you've heard through the grapevine, like, hey, this team is really bad at showing the results of their programs, or you've been to their presentations and you've seen that it lacks, visuals, or at least data that would be easy to understand, or you just already have these skills and it's easy for you to create a chart and show something. I go and make myself known and I volunteer. Like, I let my manager know, like, hey, I'm interested in trying to get some more expertise. Like, are there any cross-functional projects that you are aware of that could use a data person? Um, Sometimes that's an easy thing and they'll say yes. Sally in accounting is trying to show, how we've saved XYZ over the last 2 years. Maybe you could talk to her about the data that she has and see what we could do with it. Sometimes, they don't have anything. Sometimes they don't know. They may not be connected, or they may be even, disconnected from other teams. And so that's partially where you'll also want to go back to the relationship side. So let's stay up here. Let's talk about the second avenue, which is strategic changes to your current work. So you can also look at the body of work that you're being assigned to or that you're given. What are things that you wish you were doing? So, and this isn't out of this is about seeing yourself in a place that you would like to be. So, if you're on a larger team and there's a number of analysts, are there people that are working on projects that you think are exciting, that you would like to be assigned to? Or are there people that have opportunities that you're like, dang, I wish I was working on that? Um, that's a really great place to start because my current manager, the first thing that she told me was, well, the answer isn't always going to be yes, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And that's really how I was able to take on. I actually just got assigned to start taking on the program management for the IT team as well. And so that's opened up a whole new set of technical expertise and people that I get to interact with and visibly get to be seen for. And so I just took a look at the work that I currently have and I thought about like how could I strategically change what I'm doing without, changing what I'm doing. I didn't abandon any of the work that I currently have, but I just kind of opened myself up to the possibility. Um, and so let's keep going to the left. To the right. Oh goodness. So sometimes it's been a long day. That's all I can say. So the point at the top, so making your expertise a priority. So there may be projects or teams that you're on that don't take visualization seriously or don't take data collection as something that's required, or the project is moving too fast, they don't really care about the numbers, which is something that I've heard a million times. They just care about that we accomplished a long-term goal. um, how do you find ways to make your experience a priority? Can you volunteer? Can you create a dashboard and show someone retroactively and be like, hey, I was looking at this info and this is what I came up with. um, I've done that a few times, just making a Jira dashboard to show a different view of how tickets are moving through a process. And when you show someone like something that you've done, that you've put effort into, that also shows, of course, taking the initiative and showing that your expertise is important and it can be leveraged. And so, you make somebody else look good by using these skills that you have. So that's just uh, another way to look at using your technical skills and using your technical skills and making the correlation to a leadership, view. Very last, outside engagements. So let's say you've already asked or you volunteered to work on something cross-functional and there's just nothing. Or your manager's like, hey, I can't think of anything, just work on what I gave you. Um, Outside engagements are always another way. An outside engagement, for example, for myself, I'm here. Uh, speaking engagements, reaching out to volunteer organizations to get those opportunities that don't exist in your 9 to 5 or your day to day. Working with other, contracting opportunities, whatever makes sense for you, or at least like whatever makes sense for the time that you have available. Outside engagements are just something that makes sense because everything that you want isn't always going to pop up or just be available. And those opportunities may not make themselves available in the organization that you're in. You just have to be realistic about it. And so making sure that you're looking out for yourself. Outside engagements are also great because you can volunteer and be a lead somewhere else and show that you have those leadership skills. So just always keep that in mind. It's not always a negative thing if there's not something that shows within your current place. Okay, the second part, relationship wise. So we touched on it before, but networking, the thing that makes me shake in my boots. It shakes in my boots because based on who you are, of course, there's going to be opportunities to network with other people. So if you're in a sales organization, there may be a lot of salespeople that are just naturally going to come and introduce themselves to you. It may be the type of organization where people are a little more, and I'm not going to say friendly, but just open. And you'll be sitting somewhere and they'll walk up and introduce themselves. Or someone will introduce themselves and come sit with you at lunch, if you're sitting by yourself. Then there's other places that are just people like to keep to themselves, and you won't naturally get to interact with other people. So how do you turn that around so that you can find those connections? So there's both networking up and then networking across and below. So networking up is usually what everybody thinks of, which is, oh, I'm going to go, grab a skip level meeting with my manager's manager. And I'm going to tell them about all the fantastic projects that I've been doing. And I'm also going to tell them how great our team is and, make myself known that way. Um, Networking up is great, of course. You always want to look at what the possibilities are, and networking up just means someone that is at a level, above where you're currently at. And that could be job title wise or just say market wise. Like say you're in Topeka, Kansas, and you have a dream of you want to make a move to Chicago or you want to move to San Francisco. Reaching out to find connections that are on LinkedIn, perhaps, or in some of these networking groups, just to meet someone that's in that area that you want to go into. I mean, I call that networking up because they're at a place where you would like to be at. And so there's a lot of resources online that I think are pretty easy to help with guiding your path with networking up. So, if anybody has tips or tricks that they would like to share, please chime in if you have any. But the only tip I always have is I just try to bring something that they would find interesting. For instance, a lot of people are pretty easy to find at least like one hobby or at least something that's going on in their life. So whether your networking up connection has like kids that are going to college, you can share information that about internships or interesting internships or, things that are great for people in Gen Z or something that you've learned about Gen Z. Um, or if their kid plays sports, if they play sports. So there's like the laundry list of things that I try to go through because there's a Rolodex of ways to connect with people. But for people like myself, I have to think about like a good way because if I get put in the spot or I'm walking around and someone says like, "Hey, come over here," the first thing on my mind is like, "Okay, what's the list? What's the list of things that I can go through as topics or like ways to connect with people?" And so, it's something that I take that I practice so that I don't necessarily find myself unable to do so. All right. Networking across and below. So, something that I think that has been underrated, or at least I've seen more articles, I've seen more LinkedIn articles and newsletters about recently, is people talking about networking across and below. So, networking across is just the idea of people that are at the same level as you, have the same job title, because, the project managers of today make the PMO leaders tomorrow. The same analysts that are working with you today make the leads tomorrow and make the COOs of tomorrow and the chief data officers tomorrow. So the idea is just, making those connections with people that you work with right now. I know that feels, to me, it feels more low stakes because there's not necessarily a feeling of having to impress somebody. That may be my personal view on it, but it's a little easier to approach someone that's also doing the same work as you because you can commiserate a little bit more. It's easy to talk to them about like your day to day and be very specific about details. And so always looking for those opportunities, beyond the team that I'm on right now. So those, of course, are people that may not be in the leadership positions or maybe in meetings, but they don't contribute a whole lot. And so I find it super easy to do that one-on-one strategy that I mentioned earlier, which is I just send them a ping on the side and say, "Hey, we're both in this meeting about the status meeting. I saw your name. I don't think we've met before. Can we do a one-on-one?" And then I go check their calendar and set it up. And so that's a really easy way for you to create a network of people that are with you because, like I said, those people become the leaders and they get promoted and they get those new opportunities and they go to other companies and you learn about the world. You can create a network that's really rich, just networking across, and then also with those people that are at positions that may not be at the same level as yours. And that literally can be, the receptionist. It could be a first year analyst. It could be someone that has been in the same role for 6, 7 years. It literally could be anyone. So just look for those opportunities. I think it's important to do so. Okay. The last section here is just talking about the formal and informal side of it. So of course, I mentioned those one-on-ones and then seeing someone and walking up saying hi or reaching out to them and sending them a ping. So, formally, that's because you're initiating this. You see the opportunity, so you go and do something. The one thing that I loved about the COVID era was the ability to just send somebody a message, and they're paying attention, they're going to receive it. So I still see that in some ways that's still happening, but take advantage of it because you don't have to just feel like you have to just walk up to somebody or you have to, go to the break room and like go introduce yourself face to face. I love doing pings. I love reaching out online. If you're like me, please take advantage of this because it's the easiest way to get in and meet new people. So keep taking advantage of that way. The informal way, I call this the planned luck. So um, at some of the organizations that I've been at, they've been like huge sales organizations. Those other ones that are more about their technical expertise. But you, over time, can of course try to observe like, do people go to these happy hours? Do they have clubs or ERGs that are more active than other ERGs? Like, should I focus my time with this group over one that I might, be more interested in? I call it planned luck because you're putting yourself in a position to succeed. And so if I know that everyone goes to the break room for lunch, I'll try to get there early so then I don't have to pick where to sit. Like they'll just come sit with me. If I know like that there's an all hands and um, I know that people run out of seats early. I'll get there a little bit early so then I can save a seat for someone that, or I'll get there early so then I know, hey, I know that this VP always comes here late. I'll send her a message and say, hey, Sarah, I'm going to save you a seat. I'm gonna sit in the front left. Like, just look for me. I'm saving you a seat. Like, I try to make it so that people see me in this position and then they like gravitate towards me. So I call it planned luck. But just think about what are some ways that you can do that for yourself. It's a matter of just stopping and thinking about what are those ways that I can make myself available. And my very last trick. So personally, something that I will share. I don't drink, and so when I was at a couple of these sales organizations, that was the core of the socializing. You had to go to the happy hours. You had to stay at the happy hours. You had to talk to everybody at the happy hours. A simple trick, I just always get soda water with a lime in it, so it looks like a vodka soda. Um, just like I did not want to have to participate in some parts of it, but there's ways around it. So just be creative. Think of different ways that you can take advantage of being a part of the action and just being seen and being visible. Okay, we're towards the end. Um, I'll take a quick break. Does anybody have an example of something that they've tried recently or that they want to share that may be an instance that you feel like other folks could take advantage of? Formal or informal or getting to meet other people?
Yeah, I think you mentioned something similar before. So even if it's like a virtual meeting, I like to get there as early as I can so that people say hi to me and
Mm-hmm.
that so I don't have to like be nervous about speaking up. Sometimes people are already in a conversation if you join a little late. So yeah, I try, and even in person, like I try to be the first one there, just so that again, folks have to sort of say hi to me, and I don't have to be nervous about should I say hi, how should I say hi. I'll kind of follow their lead, so to speak. So and that's not to say I don't have a personality or whatever the case is. It's just less thinking, right? It's less work. Because I, as an introvert, I tend to, as you mentioned, overthink and
Mhm.
overanalyze and all that stuff. And so it just makes my life easier. Kind of like,
Mm.
maybe wearing black every day, right? Just just like whatever. If I don't have to think about what I have to wear, then my mind, has space for I have bandwidth for to think about other things like the projects I'm working on. So I really like those tips.
Yeah, I'm with you. If I can just make it so I don't have to be the first, I don't have to be the one that makes the first step. I'm like you. It's just so it's you can make it easy for yourself. So that's what I like to that's one thing that I like to just harp about. Um, okay, so let's wrap up with a couple of insights. I think I have three that I wanted to highlight. So forgive me because I am not a data expert, but I tried to use some analogies. So let me know if I got these right or not. Um, one thing that I wanted to just build on was tailoring like the depth of your data, like for each audience. So, like communication as your data modeling. So, for like an executive team, you're going to have a different output than you would for an analyst team. Something that I think is important is just that a chart really is something that shows you what happened. And then the narrative that goes with that chart explains why it happened. It explains the why it matters. And then also, what are we learning and what are we going to do next? The leadership side of that, how it ties all into it, is just leadership is showing that you're helping others understand like what are the signals that they're looking for in this noise, in this data set of raw data. What is it that's really important, and what am I cherry picking out of this to get the output that I'm looking for? So that's what I wanted to use as an analogy for like what is communication and how do you use that as a tool? Okay, and then another insight is just the using your data and your storytelling as leadership leverage. And so the narratives that you want to implement are what can these trends mean for strategies? What I want to take from this audience of being data engineers is you're always looking for data quality. You're always architecting, how data is structured. You're also worried about that availability. But what happens with the business side is we business users don't understand all of that work that you're doing because to them it may be invisible. And it's invisible because it doesn't tap into the way that they understand. In order to influence those people, you always want to leverage why something matters and letting them know why it matters. And so I use this gift for Back to the Future because something that I know is a buzzword that every one of us hears is strategy. How does this matter to our strategy? That's just showing somebody like, what does this mean for the future? Like, what does this mean long term? Um, and then, of course, like bundling that all as here's this strategy, because that's something that leaders are supposed to be, always thinking of. Where are we going and how do we use this information? That's how you continue to like bolster that leadership profile for yourself. Okay, and then feedback as query optimization. And so effective feedback, tailoring your message. So, like a lot of introverted people, you can think of a million possibilities, and it's kind of hard to think like, what do I use in this very specific instance? Like trial and error, you have to figure out what works for your different audiences. So you want to be precise, you want to provide actionable information, and then you also want to talk about why it's the optimal way of doing things and like what you put into that. So, what is the performance that you actually put into it? Is it that you have these logs that you're using? Like, what tools are you using? How many, like, what's the size of your log, the sample size of your data? Um, Giving people insight on the sources of what you're doing, so that it's clear, like, hey, this is the amount of work that I did, and here's the output, and here's how I've made it simple for you to understand. So all of that ties into all of those keywords of here's how I was a strategic leader, and here's the evidence of that. Okay, I am at the very end. Um, So I just had a Q&A slide. So if anyone wanted to ask any questions about any of the slides or we want to roll back into anything, let me know. I also would be happy to talk about any of my background that I've shared. And I just have the last couple of slides as my contact info. So if anyone would like to connect on LinkedIn, just let me know. I would love to talk and chat with folks. And then I just put my email address up there. It's just my name at gmail.com. And if you could put in the message that you're from the data presentation, that would help me know where where you came from. And then I just have some of my labels from different places that I've been. So if you're a former colleague, just give me a shout out. Again, I've always been in the program and project management space. And so I've had the really cool opportunity to work in all of these different verticals. And as you can see, some of these companies are still here, some of them are not. So you take all those experiences and roll them into where you want to go. But the one label at the top is JustWorks, and that's where I'm at right now. I'm based in New York City. I live in Brooklyn with my cat. She's a tuxedo cat named Lux. And I'm just constantly looking for ways to improve my ability to deliver on services and projects and programs. And so that's what I enjoy right now. And so I'd love to connect with anybody that also is doing the same, just building their life around these roles that we've had over time. So I do want to say thank you, and I'll go back to the Q&A slide just in case anybody has anything that they'd love to share or talk a little bit more about.
That was a great presentation, Tiffany. Thank you. I really liked when you were talking about too, like volunteering to be a resource for other teams, because to me that's so crucial. Then people start the conversation with you. A lot of times they know you're the go-to person. Back to the other part you were saying.
Yeah.
So really, a lot of really great stuff, but particularly wanted to call that out. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Krista.
Yeah, no, this was really great. A lot of good stuff. A lot of different ways to think about like how we can make that introverted thing. We overthink things and make that actually a strength.
Oh,
just
yeah.
the little things.
Mm-hmm. It takes time. So I know that's one thing that I've learned is it took time over the years to get used to, but you'll settle into it. And I think this is a great community of people that can share that over time, that those mistakes that we make early on kind of build up your profile for later. So always keep that in mind. Okay. Well, I will stop sharing. And I think that's everything that I have.